The maintenance pod hummed around Rachel Daniels as she calibrated the thrust vectoring system on the Chimera PX-9's port engine. Sweat beaded along her hairline. Not from exertion. The environmental controls in the hangar kept the temperature at a perfect 68 degrees, but from concentration. Every adjustment had to be precise. Lives depended on it, even if those lives belonged to people who wouldn't spare her a second glance. 10 years after the Proxima betrayal, Celestial Base Alpha had finally established a fragile peace with the Centurions. The interspecies delegation arriving tomorrow would mark the first official diplomatic exchange since the ceasefire. And somehow, Rachel had drawn the assignment to prepare the crown jewel of human-Centurion cooperation, the Chimera PX-9, a hybrid spacecraft that combined human ingenuity with Centurion technology. "Daniels, how much longer on that calibration?" Rachel's hands stilled. Senior Technical Sergeant Jake Wilson's voice echoed through her comm unit. Gruff, but not unkind. Wilson had been her supervisor for 8 years now, ever since she'd arrived at Celestial Base Alpha with forged credentials and a desperate need to disappear. "Almost done, sir. Final adjustments to the thrust vector controls. 10 minutes. Tops. Make it 5. Commander Stone wants all systems green before the briefing. Can't have our fancy shuttle looking anything less than perfect for our guests." "Understood." Rachel turned back to her work, fingers dancing across the calibration panel with practiced ease. Too practiced, perhaps. She needed to be careful not to betray how familiar she was with these systems. Maintenance technicians didn't possess the intimate knowledge of flight controls that pilots did. And Rachel Daniels was just a maintenance technician, not Captain Rachel Hayes, the decorated starfighter pilot whose career had ended in disgrace. 8 years of hiding. 8 years of keeping her head down, of fading into the background. 8 years of watching inferior pilots command vessels she could fly with her eyes closed. But the alternative was worse. Court-martial. Possibly prison. Certainly the permanent loss of the stars. A ping from her tablet interrupted her thoughts. New orders. Report to Hangar Bay C at 0600 hours for pre-flight inspection of the Chimera PX-9. Full diplomatic escort detail. Captain Derek Harrison, pilot. Rachel's jaw tightened. Harrison? Of course it would be Harrison. Third-generation military. Academy graduate with honors he hadn't earned. Promoted faster than anyone in fleet history. She'd heard the rumors about his father's connections, about test scores mysteriously changed, about commendations awarded for missions where others had done the real work. The kind of pilot who made her blood boil. The kind of pilot she would have to watch tomorrow, sitting in her rightful place while she checked pressure gauges and monitored fuel levels. Rachel finished her calibrations, signed off on the system, and began packing her tools. Tomorrow would be just another day of invisibility. She had survived 8 years of them. What was one more? The hangar buzzed with activity when Rachel arrived the next morning. Dress uniforms everywhere, brass polished to a shine, boots gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Rachel slipped through the crowd in her gray coveralls, tool belt hanging heavy on her hips, anonymous among the preparations. "Daniels!" Wilson appeared at her side, his own coveralls crisp despite their worn edges. He handed her a data pad. "Pre-flight checklist. Harrison wants everything triple-checked." "When doesn't he?" Rachel muttered. Wilson's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Behave yourself. This isn't just any flight. We've got the Centurion ambassador and their military attaché on board, plus Commander Stone and half the brass from HQ." "I know the drill." "I know you do." Wilson hesitated. "Listen, Rachel, keep your head down today, all right? Harrison's been on edge since they announced he'd be piloting. Something about the Centurions makes him nervous." "He should be nervous," Rachel said, scrolling through the checklist. "The Chimera's a beast. Hybrid systems are tricky even for experienced pilots." Wilson gave her a curious look. "And you'd know that how?" Rachel froze, careless. Just repeating what I've heard in the mess hall. Right. Wilson didn't sound convinced. Just do your job. Daniels, no commentary, no suggestions, especially not to Harrison. Yes, sir. Rachel made her way to the Chimera PX-9, sleek and deadly at the far end of the hangar. Half the size of a standard shuttle, but twice as powerful. Its silver hull gleamed under the lights. Centuran script flowing alongside human lettering across its fuselage. A crowd had gathered around it, officers and dignitaries gazing up in admiration. Rachel circled to the maintenance access panel on the underside, away from the spectators. She needed to check the gravitational compensators before moving on to the propulsion systems. The sooner she finished, the sooner she could retreat to the relative safety of the maintenance bay. What's the status on the environmental controls? Rachel stiffened at the voice. Captain Derek Harrison stood behind her, his perfectly tailored flight suit a stark contrast to her utilitarian coveralls. Tall, blonde, with the kind of chiseled features that seemed engineered specifically for recruiting posters. Harrison embodied everything the fleet wanted the public to see. Green across the board, sir, Rachel replied, not looking up from her work. Just finishing the pre-flight checks now. I need this bird perfect, technician. The commander's watching this one personally. Understood, sir. Harrison lingered, watching her work with obvious impatience. You're new, aren't you? Rachel bit back a sigh. 8 years at this base, and he'd never bothered to learn the names or faces of the maintenance crew. No, sir. I've been here 8 years. Huh. Harrison sounded genuinely surprised. Well, just make sure you don't mess anything up. This ship cost more than you'll make in a lifetime. Yes, sir. He finally moved away, drawn by the arrival of more officers. Rachel exhaled slowly, counting backward from 10 to calm herself. Just as she prepared to return to her work, a shadow fell across her tools. 3 Centurans stood nearby, their tall, slender forms draped in formal robes of deep blue and silver. The smallest of them, still nearly 7 feet tall, turned toward Rachel, 6-fingered hands clasped before it. Ambassador Krazak, Rachel realized. She recognized the ceremonial markings on its face from the briefing materials. You prepare the vessel? The Centuran's voice was musical, the translation device at its throat, adding an electronic undercurrent. Rachel straightened, wiping her hands on a rag. Yes, Ambassador. Final systems check before departure. The Centuran's large, pupilless eyes studied her. You know the systems well? Standard maintenance procedures, Ambassador? Nothing special. The 2 other Centurans conferred quietly, their language a series of clicks and trills. The taller of the 2, clearly military from the insignia on its shoulder, stepped forward. The Chimera requires specialized knowledge. You possess this? Rachel chose her words carefully. Our maintenance teams are fully trained on the hybrid systems. Sir, the Chimera will perform as expected. The military Centurion made a gesture Rachel didn't recognize, but something in its posture suggested skepticism. Before it could speak again, Harrison returned, Commander Stone at his side. Ambassador Krazak, Harrison said smoothly. I see you're inspecting our maintenance procedures. I assure you, everything is in order. The Centurion ambassador tilted its head. Your technician seems competent. She's adequate, Harrison replied with a dismissive wave. But the real magic happens in the cockpit. Perhaps you'd like to see where I'll be piloting this magnificent machine. Rachel kept her eyes on her work as Harrison led the delegation away, but her hands trembled slightly with suppressed anger. Adequate. As if he could tell the difference between a competent technician and an incompetent one. As if he had ever bothered to learn what the maintenance crew actually did. Don't let him get to you. Rachel turned to find Major Jennifer Cross watching her, arms folded across her chest. Cross was one of the few female pilots who had achieved squadron leader status, respected for both her skill and her unwillingness to tolerate nonsense. I don't know what you mean, Major. Cross smiled thinly. Harrison's an ass. Everyone knows it. Rachel returned to her checklist. Not my place to judge, ma'am. No? Cross leaned against the hull, lowering her voice. Word is, you've got more technical knowledge than half the pilots on this base. Wilson speaks highly of you. Sergeant Wilson is generous with his praise. Or accurate with it. Cross studied her. You ever consider applying to the academy? With your technical background, you'd have a leg up. Rachel nearly laughed. I'm a bit old for the academy, Major. There are other paths. Combat experience can substitute for academy training. I'm happy where I am. Cross raised an eyebrow. Are you? Because you don't look happy. You look like someone who's settling. Before Rachel could respond, the hangar's announcement system crackled to life. All personnel, prepare for dignitaries' inspection. Formal positions in 5 minutes. Cross straightened. Think about it, Daniels. People with your skills shouldn't be wasted on maintenance checks. She glanced toward Harrison, now gesturing grandly to the assembled officers near the cockpit. Especially when certain others rise above their capabilities. Rachel watched Cross walk away, unease settling in her stomach. The Major was too perceptive by half. If she started digging into Rachel's background, no, her fabricated identity would hold. It had to. The alternative was unthinkable. Rachel finished her checks, signed off on the systems, and tried to make herself scarce as the formal inspection began. Commander Stone led the procession of officers and Centurion dignitaries around the Chimera, Harrison at his side providing commentary. Rachel stood at attention with the rest of the maintenance crew, hoping to remain invisible. No such luck. And of course, Harrison was saying as they approached, the maintenance team ensures that all systems function properly, though I personally verify everything before flight. He gestured toward the line of technicians. These folks handle the grunt work. Rachel kept her expression neutral as the group passed. Commander Stone barely glanced at them, but Ambassador Krazak slowed, those unsettling pupilless eyes, scanning each face. When the Centurion reached Rachel, it paused. This one, it said, pointing a 6-fingered hand at her. She showed knowledge of the systems. Harrison looked momentarily confused, then forced a laugh. Ah, technician. Daniels, Wilson supplied from further down the line. Daniels, Harrison repeated. Yes, one of our more experienced maintenance workers. But I assure you, Ambassador, the real expertise lies with the pilots who actually fly these machines. The Centurion military attaché stepped forward, its height forcing Harrison to tilt his head back. In our culture, those who maintain the vessels often understand them more intimately than those who command them. It is a position of honor. Harrison's smile tightened. Well, in our fleet, we value specialization. Pilots fly, technicians fix, each to their own skill set. Commander Stone, sensing tension, intervened smoothly. Perhaps a demonstration would be in order. Captain Harrison can show our guests the Chimera's capabilities in a short flight this afternoon. An excellent suggestion, Ambassador Krazak agreed. But first, I would see this maintenance specialist demonstrate her knowledge. Rachel's heart rate spiked. This wasn't part of the plan. Harrison laughed nervously. I'm not sure what you mean, Ambassador. Simple, the Centurion replied. Let her sit in the pilot's seat, explain the systems, show her understanding. A cold silence fell over the group. Rachel fought to keep her breathing steady. This was exactly the kind of attention she'd spent 8 years avoiding. That's highly irregular, Commander Stone said carefully. Our maintenance personnel aren't authorized to access flight controls. The military attaché made a dismissive gesture. Then, your integration is superficial. How can you maintain what you do not fully comprehend? Harrison's face flushed. Our technicians understand their roles perfectly well. There's no need for... I insist, Ambassador Krazak interrupted, its voice suddenly hard. If we are to trust this alliance, we must see that your people truly understand the technology we have shared. It turned to Commander Stone. Unless there is some reason you fear allowing a simple demonstration. Rachel saw the calculation in Stone's eyes. The diplomatic implications, the potential insult to their guests, the fragility of the newly formed alliance. Very well, Stone said at last. A brief demonstration. Technician Daniels can explain the basic control systems while seated in the cockpit. He turned to Rachel. 5 minutes. Technician. No touching the actual flight controls. Understood? Rachel swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Wilson stepped forward. Commander, regulations require a waiver for non-flight personnel to occupy the pilot's seat, for insurance purposes. Make it happen, Sergeant, Stone ordered. I want this done properly. As Wilson led her away to sign the necessary forms, Rachel felt the weight of eyes on her back. She was walking into exactly the kind of situation she'd spent years avoiding. One slip, one too knowledgeable comment, and questions would follow. Questions she couldn't answer without revealing who she really was. In the small administrative office adjacent to the hangar, Wilson slid a tablet across the desk to her. Standard liability waiver. Says you won't sue if something goes haywire while you're in the seat. His voice lowered. Rachel, what's going on? I've never seen you this tense. Rachel signed the form with a shaking hand. Nothing. Just don't like being put on display. It's more than that. Wilson leaned forward. Look, I've supervised you for 8 years. You're the best damn technician I've ever worked with. Too good, sometimes. He paused. You know more than you should about flight systems. Always have. Rachel met his gaze steadily. I read the manuals. Nobody reads the manuals that thoroughly. Wilson sighed. Whatever your story is, it's yours to tell or keep. But be careful in there. Harrison doesn't like being upstaged, and Stone is watching for any excuse to blame someone if this demonstration goes south. I'll keep it simple. Basic systems overview. Nothing fancy. Wilson nodded, but concern lingered in his eyes. 5 minutes. Then you're out of that seat. Rachel returned to the hangar, her mind racing. 5 minutes. She could handle 5 minutes. Just point out the obvious controls, avoid anything too technical, and get out. She would not, could not, reveal her true knowledge of the Chimera's systems. The crowd had grown during her absence. It seemed every off-duty officer on the base had found an excuse to witness the unprecedented spectacle of a maintenance technician being put on display in the cockpit of the fleet's most advanced spacecraft. Harrison stood by the access ladder, his expression thunderous. Just so we're clear, technician, you touch nothing without my express permission. This is still my ship. Rachel nodded, keeping her eyes downcast. Understood, Captain. Commander Stone addressed the assembled group. At the request of our Centurion guests, Technician Daniels will provide a brief overview of the Chimera's control systems. This is simply a demonstration of our maintenance team's familiarity with the equipment they service. Captain Harrison remains the designated pilot for today's diplomatic flight. Ambassador Krazak inclined its head in acknowledgement, but Rachel noticed the military attaché watching her with unsettling intensity. Rachel climbed the access ladder, her heart hammering against her ribs. The cockpit of the Chimera PX-9 was compact but elegantly designed, a seamless blend of human ergonomics and Centurion efficiency. The neural interface headset hung above the pilot's seat, standard for hybrid vessels, allowing the pilot's intentions to be communicated directly to the ship's systems. She slid into the seat carefully, keeping her hands visible and away from the controls. Harrison climbed up behind her, positioning himself where he could see everything she did. Commander Stone and the Centurion delegation watched from below. Proceed, technician, Stone called up. Rachel took a deep breath and began the simplest, most basic overview she could manage. The Chimera PX-9 features a dual control system, she explained, indicating the main console. Standard manual flight controls are supplemented by the Centurion neural interface, which allows for more intuitive handling during complex maneuvers. She pointed to various displays, describing their functions in deliberately general terms: environmental readouts, navigation, communications, the primary systems any layperson would recognize. Harrison relaxed slightly as she continued her pedestrian explanation. This was clearly going to be the technical equivalent of a children's tour. Then, Ambassador Krazak spoke. The harmonic stabilizers. Explain their function in relation to the quantum drive. Rachel froze. That was not basic information. That was specialized knowledge even many pilots wouldn't possess. I'm not sure a technician would be familiar with, Harrison began. The harmonic stabilizers create a phase-matched field that prevents quantum fluctuations from destabilizing the warp bubble during transition to FTL speeds. Rachel answered automatically. Then bit her tongue. Too specific. Too knowledgeable. Harrison stared at her. So did Commander Stone. The Centurion military attaché stepped closer. And the temporal variance compensators? Rachel hesitated, catching Wilson's warning look from the edge of the crowd. Those are maintained by a specialized team, not part of my direct responsibilities. A lie, and not a convincing one. Rachel could recite the specifications of the temporal variance compensators in her sleep. Had done so during the endless simulator runs before her first flight in a hybrid vessel. The military attaché made a sound that the translator didn't catch. Rachel suspected it was the Centurion equivalent of a snort of disbelief. Activate the pre-flight sequence, Ambassador Krazak suddenly demanded. Commander Stone stepped forward. Ambassador, that wasn't part of our agreement. The technician is only here to explain the systems, not to operate them. A maintenance specialist of her experience should be capable of a simple pre-flight sequence, the ambassador insisted. Unless there is something you are concealing about your personnel's capabilities. The accusation hung in the air. Rachel saw the political calculation in Stone's eyes. The alliance was too important, too fragile to risk over protocol. Captain Harrison will supervise, Stone decided. Technician, you may initialize the pre-flight sequence. Nothing beyond that. Harrison leaned close to Rachel's ear. Don't you dare mess this up, he hissed. One mistake and I'll have you scrubbing waste reclamation tubes for a month. Rachel nodded, her mouth dry. She could do this. A simple pre-flight sequence was mechanical, procedural. Nothing that would reveal her true skills. She reached for the controls, and 8 years of pretense fell away. Her hands moved with the fluid confidence of thousands of hours in the cockpit. Muscle memory took over as she initiated the sequence. Power systems online, environmental controls engaged, navigation systems booting, communication channels open. The Chimera hummed to life around her, displays illuminated, casting a blue glow across her face. The neural interface headset lowered automatically from its housing above the seat, hovering just inches from her head. Rachel kept her breathing steady, forcing her movements to appear methodical rather than instinctive. Just a technician following procedures, nothing more. But her hands betrayed her. They moved too smoothly, with too much assurance. The practiced grace of a pilot, not the careful precision of a maintenance worker. Enough, Harrison said suddenly, reaching past her to halt the sequence. I think we've satisfied the ambassador's curiosity. Too late. Rachel saw recognition dawning in the Centurion military attaché's eyes. It stepped forward, pointing directly at her. This one has flown before, it announced. The neural pathways are evident in her movements. A murmur ran through the crowd. Commander Stone's expression darkened. Ridiculous, Harrison scoffed. She's a maintenance technician, not a pilot. The military attaché turned to Ambassador Krazak. The humans deceive us. They hide their skilled ones, pretending weakness where there is strength. Ambassador Krazak's pupilless eyes narrowed. Explain this deception, Commander Stone. Stone glared at Rachel. There's nothing to explain. Technician Daniels has never been cleared for flight duty. Then prove it, the ambassador challenged. Let her complete the sequence. If she fails, we will know your words are true. This is absurd, Stone protested. We don't put untrained personnel in control of multi-billion credit spacecraft. Then your alliance is built on mistrust. The military attaché declared, We share our technology, yet you hide your capabilities. Perhaps we should reconsider. I'll do it, Rachel interrupted, her voice cutting through the tension. All eyes turned to her. Wilson was shaking his head frantically from the sidelines. Major Cross watched with newfound interest. Harrison looked murderous. You'll do nothing of the sort, Stone barked. Technician, you are ordered to vacate that seat immediately. Rachel didn't move. 8 years of hiding. 8 years of watching incompetent pilots like Harrison claim glory they hadn't earned. 8 years of burying Captain Hayes beneath the fiction of Rachel Daniels. She was tired of hiding. With respect, Commander, she said, her voice steady. The ambassador has raised a valid concern about our commitment to this alliance. If a simple pre-flight sequence will satisfy their doubts, then surely the diplomatic benefits outweigh the procedural irregularity. Stone's face flushed with anger, but she saw the calculation behind his eyes. The Centurions were watching closely. A refusal now would be taken as confirmation of their suspicions. Captain Harrison will remain present to take control if necessary, Stone said at last. 5 minutes. Technician, complete the pre-flight sequence and power down. Nothing more. Harrison leaned close again. You're finished after this, he whispered. I don't care how good a mechanic you are. Rachel ignored him, turning her attention back to the controls. This time, she didn't bother hiding her expertise. Her fingers danced across the console with practiced efficiency, bringing systems online in perfect sequence. The Chimera responded eagerly, as if recognizing a familiar touch. The neural interface headset descended fully, hovering just above her head. Rachel hesitated. The interface was the most intimate part of piloting a hybrid vessel, creating a direct connection between pilot and ship. Once engaged, the Chimera would recognize her neural patterns it might remember from years ago. The interface, Ambassador Krazak prompted. You do not engage it? That's beyond the scope of a pre-flight sequence. Harrison interjected quickly. The technician isn't rated for neural interface operations. The military attaché made that untranslatable sound again. Then your demonstration is meaningless. Without the interface, you merely press buttons. Any child could do as much. Rachel felt the moment balancing on a knife's edge. Her career, what remained of it, against the alliance. Her secret against the truth. The safe path against the right one. She reached up and pulled the neural interface headset into place. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The Chimera recognized her. Displays flared brighter. Systems synchronized faster than standard protocols allowed. The ship's AI, designed to adapt to its pilot's neural patterns, instantly reconfigured to match patterns it remembered from years before. A soft chime sounded, the ship's acknowledgement of a recognized pilot. Harrison's eyes widened in confusion.
What the hell?
Rachel couldn't stop now. The neural connection hummed through her consciousness, awakening muscle memories and instincts long suppressed. The Chimera was hers again, an extension of her will, responding to her thoughts as much as her physical inputs. Full pre-flight sequence complete, she announced, her voice taking on the clipped professionalism of a senior pilot. All systems nominal. Chimera PX-9 ready for departure? Ambassador Krazak stepped closer, its tall form looming below the cockpit. The vessel recognizes you. It wasn't a question. Technician, power down now, Commander Stone ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. That's a direct order. Rachel's hands hovered over the controls. She could shut it down, return to anonymity, go back to being just another technician. But the military attaché was watching her with those knowing eyes. Show us, it said simply. Rachel made her decision. Chimera PX-9 requesting clearance for demonstration flight, she said, keying the comm system. The flight controller's confused voice came through the speakers. Chimera, no flight is scheduled until 1400 hours. Captain Harrison is listed as pilot of record. Override authorization Hayes 7 Delta Niner, Rachel replied, using a command code that should have been deactivated years ago. Emergency diplomatic protocol. A pause. Then, override accepted. Chimera, you are cleared for bay exit and local space maneuvers. Maintain safety perimeter. Harrison lunged for the override switch. This is insanity. She's not authorized. Rachel engaged the gravitational compensators, pushed the thrust controls forward, and sealed the cockpit in one fluid motion. Harrison stumbled as the ship hummed to life, trapping him in the observer's seat behind her. Through the neural interface, Rachel felt the Chimera's eagerness, like a racehorse finally freed to run. The hangar doors were already opening in response to the flight controller's authorization. Beyond them lay open space and freedom. "Hang on, Captain," Rachel said, allowing herself a small smile of satisfaction. "This might get interesting." She guided the Chimera out of the hangar with delicate precision, the massive vessel responding to her thoughts almost before her hands moved the controls. As they cleared the bay, she opened a comm channel to the stunned crowd below. "Commander Stone, Ambassador Krazak, honored guests," she said formally. "Captain Rachel Hayes, formerly of the Joint Species Flight Program, requesting permission to demonstrate the Chimera PX-9's full capabilities." The silence that followed was profound. Rachel could almost see Commander Stone's face purpling with rage, the confusion spreading through the assembled officers. Wilson's resigned shake of the head, Cross's delighted grin. Finally, Ambassador Krazak's voice came through the comm. "Proceed, Captain Hayes." Rachel needed no further encouragement. She sent the Chimera soaring upward, accelerating hard enough that the gravitational compensators struggled to keep pace. Harrison was pressed back into his seat, his curses lost in the roar of the engines. Once clear of the station's immediate vicinity, Rachel put the ship through its paces. Tight spirals, hairpin turns at speeds that would have sheared the wings off conventional craft. A perfect Immelmann maneuver, followed by a corkscrew descent that had Harrison reaching for the air sickness bag. Through it all, the Chimera responded flawlessly, the neural interface allowing Rachel to push the boundaries of what the ship could do. This wasn't just flying. It was dancing among the stars, a demonstration of perfect unity between pilot and vessel. Rachel opened the exterior cameras, broadcasting the view to the hangar below. Let them see what the Chimera could really do in capable hands. Let the Centurions witness the full potential of the technology they had helped create. After 10 minutes of increasingly complex maneuvers, Rachel brought the Chimera to a hover directly above the hangar bay, perfectly positioned for a vertical descent. "Demonstration complete," she announced. Returning to bay, she guided the ship down with feather-light touches, settling it precisely on its landing marks with barely a tremor. A textbook landing that would have earned top scores at the Academy. As the engines spooled down and the systems began their automated shutdown sequence, Rachel removed the neural interface headset. The cockpit seemed suddenly quiet, empty, without the Chimera's presence in her mind. Harrison had gone silent, his face pale, knuckles white where he gripped the edges of his seat. "What the hell was that?" he demanded as color returned to his face. "Who are you?" Rachel didn't answer. She completed the shutdown sequence, opened the cockpit, and prepared to face the consequences of her actions. 8 years of hiding ended in 15 minutes of flight. At the bottom of the access ladder, chaos awaited. Commander Stone stood with 2 security officers, his expression murderous. Wilson watched from a distance, concern evident in his posture. Major Cross couldn't quite hide her smile. And the Centurions, Ambassador Krazak and the military attaché, observed it all with inscrutable alien eyes. Technician Daniels, or whoever you are hereby relieved of duty and placed under arrest," Commander Stone announced as Rachel's feet touched the deck. "Security, escort her to the brig." The security officers stepped forward, but the Centurion military attaché raised a six-fingered hand. "This action is premature, Commander Stone." Its voice carried unusual authority. "Captain Hayes is known to us." Stone faltered. "What?" The military attaché drew itself up to its full, imposing height. "I am Tactical Coordinator Viridian, formerly of the Joint Species Flight Program. I flew with Captain Hayes during the development of the first hybrid vessels." It turned to Rachel, making a gesture that might have been respect. Her neural patterns are unmistakable. She was the most skilled human pilot in the program. A stunned silence fell over the hangar. Rachel stood motionless, her secret laid bare before everyone. "Impossible," Harrison protested, having finally made his way down the ladder. "Hayes was court-martialed after Proxima, stripped of rank and dishonorably discharged." "Was she?" Tactical Coordinator Viridian's translator couldn't convey tone, but something in its posture suggested doubt. "Our records indicate otherwise." Commander Stone's comm unit chimed. He answered it, listened for a moment, then looked up with confusion, written across his features. "Admiral Bradford is inbound. ETA 5 minutes. He's requesting that we secure Captain Hayes until his arrival." Captain Hayes, not Technician Daniels. The name change sent another ripple through the assembled crowd. "I believe," Ambassador Krazak said smoothly, "that we should adjourn to your conference room, Commander. It seems there are matters requiring discussion." Rachel found herself escorted not to the brig, but to the main conference room adjacent to the command center. Security officers flanked her, but they didn't restrain her, a small courtesy that spoke volumes about the confusion of the situation. Wilson caught her eye as she passed. 8 years, he said quietly. "You flew like that after 8 years without touching a cockpit." "Some things you don't forget," Rachel replied. "For what it's worth," he added. "That was the most beautiful flying I've ever seen." In the conference room, Rachel stood at attention before Commander Stone's furious glare. Harrison paced nearby, his perfect composure shattered. The Centurion delegation sat calmly at the table, apparently content to wait for Admiral Bradford's arrival. They didn't wait long. The doors slid open to admit a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the unmistakable bearing of decades of command. Admiral Thomas Bradford had aged since Rachel had last seen him. New lines etched into his face, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. Those eyes found Rachel immediately, and something like pain flashed across his features before he composed himself. "At ease, Captain Hayes," he said quietly. "Sir, with all due respect," Commander Stone began. "This woman has been serving under false credentials. She commandeered a multi-billion credit spacecraft, endangered diplomatic personnel, and executed the most flawless demonstration flight I've ever witnessed." Bradford interrupted. "Yes, I saw the feed." He turned to the Centurions. "Ambassador Krazak, Tactical Coordinator Viridian. I apologize for this unusual situation." Ambassador Krazak made a dismissive gesture. "No apology is needed. We are pleased to have encountered Captain Hayes again. Her skills honor both our species." Bradford nodded, then addressed the room at large. "I need to speak with Captain Hayes alone. Commander Stone, please escort Captain Harrison and your staff to the observation deck. Centurion guests, you are welcome to join them or remain, as you prefer." "We will remain," Tactical Coordinator Viridian decided. "Captain Hayes's fate concerns our delegation directly." Stone looked ready to protest, but a stern look from Bradford silenced him. He ushered Harrison and the others out, leaving Rachel alone with the Admiral and the Centurions. Once the doors closed, Bradford's official demeanor softened slightly. 8 years, Rachel. 8 damn years without a word. "You know why, sir." "I know what you believed," Bradford shook his head. You ran before the investigation was complete. Rachel's hands clenched at her sides. The evidence was overwhelming. Commander Keller had arranged everything perfectly. My security codes used to access classified flight paths. My personal comm, showing communications with Proximan separatists. My bank account receiving unexplained transfers. All fabricated, Bradford said bluntly. Every bit of it. We proved that 6 months after you disappeared. Rachel stared at him, the world seeming to shift beneath her feet. What? Keller confessed eventually. When we started unraveling his financial connections to weapons manufacturers who stood to profit from prolonged conflict. Bradford sighed heavily. We cleared your name, Rachel, posthumously. Posthumously? You were presumed dead. Your shuttle was found drifting empty. We thought. He didn't finish the sentence. By the time we discovered the truth, you had established your new identity too well. Military intelligence suspected you were alive, but every time they got close, you moved on, until you settled here. Rachel struggled to process what she was hearing. 8 years of hiding. 8 years of believing herself guilty in the eyes of the fleet. 8 years wasted. Why didn't you announce my innocence publicly? She asked finally. We did. 3 times. Bradford's expression was grim. But Keller had powerful friends. They worked hard to bury the story, to preserve their own connections to his schemes. Most people still believed the original narrative. That I sold flight paths to the enemy. That I caused the deaths of 37 pilots. Rachel's voice was hollow. Those who matter know the truth. Bradford gestured to the Centurions. Our allies never believed you were guilty. They've been asking about you for years. Tactical coordinator. Viridian stepped forward. Your neural patterns are distinctive, Captain Hayes. When I recognized them through the Chimera's telemetry, I knew the deception had ended. Ambassador Krazak added. The Joint Species Flight Program suffered in your absence. No human pilot has achieved your level of neural compatibility with our systems. Rachel sank into a chair, the weight of 8 years crashing down upon her. So what happens now? That depends on you, Bradford said. Your rank can be officially restored. Back pay arranged. A new command, if you want it. He paused. Or you can walk away. No one would blame you after what you've been through. And Harrison? Stone? Rachel asked. The people who've been treating maintenance staff like dirt under their boots for years? Bradford's mouth tightened. Harrison's connections can only protect him from so much. His performance today, or lack thereof, won't go unremarked. He glanced at the Centurions, especially with such distinguished witnesses. Rachel considered her options. Return to the fleet officially? Resume her career as if the last 8 years hadn't happened? The thought was simultaneously tempting and terrifying. She had changed. The fleet had changed. Could she truly go back? I need time, she said finally. To think? Of course. Bradford stood. Take all the time you need. But Rachel. His voice softened. Don't run again. Please. The days that followed passed in a blur. News of Rachel's true identity spread through the base like wildfire. Some avoided her, unsure how to treat someone who had moved so dramatically from technician to reinstated captain. Others, particularly from the maintenance division, expressed quiet support. Wilson found her in the observation lounge on the 3rd evening, staring out at the stars. So, he said, settling into the chair beside her. Captain Hayes. Apparently, you could have told me. Rachel turned to look at him. Would you have believed me? A disgraced pilot hiding as a maintenance tech? It sounds absurd even now. I might have. Wilson shrugged. I always knew you were overqualified. The way you understood systems, anticipated problems. No ordinary technician does that. I'm sorry for the deception. Don't be... You did what you had to do. He paused. Have you decided? About Bradford's offer? Rachel returned her gaze to the stars. Not yet. Well, for what it's worth, the maintenance division would miss you, but we'd understand. They sat in companionable silence until Wilson was called away, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts. She pulled a small object from her pocket, her pilot's badge, tarnished from years of neglect. Beside it, she placed a holograph she had kept hidden all these years. Her original flight team, arms thrown around each other's shoulders, laughing at some forgotten joke. Lieutenant Torres was there, his broad grin frozen in time. He had died at Proxima, one of the 37. I thought I might find you here. Rachel looked up to see Major Cross approaching, 2 steaming mugs in her hands. She offered one to Rachel. Coffee. Real coffee. Not the synthesized stuff from the mess. Thanks. Rachel accepted the mug gratefully. How did you know? Where to find you? Or that you prefer coffee to that tea sludge they serve? Either, both. Cross settled into the seat Wilson had vacated. I've been watching you for months. Something about your manner. The way you carried yourself. Too much discipline for someone who supposedly never served above enlisted ranks. You suspected who I was? Not specifically. Just that you were hiding something. Cross sipped her coffee. For what it's worth, Harrison's been temporarily relieved of duty. Pending review. Small comfort to those he's tormented over the years. True. Cross studied her. Bradford offered you your rank back. News travels fast. It's a small base. Cross set her mug down. You should take it. Should I? The fleet needs more pilots like you. People who understand what it means to serve, not just command. Cross leaned forward. And the Centurions respect you. That's worth its weight in antimatter these days. Rachel traced the edge of her tarnished badge. I don't know if I can go back to taking orders from people like Stone. Men who value rank over skill, connection over merit. So don't. Cross smiled at Rachel's confused expression. Bradford mentioned another option, didn't he? Besides reinstatement or walking away? No. Interesting. Cross leaned back, her smile widening. Perhaps I've said too much. Before Rachel could press for details, her comm unit chimed. Admiral Bradford, requesting her presence in his office immediately. Rachel pocketed her badge and holograph, nodded farewell to Cross, and made her way through the station's corridors. Bradford wasn't alone. Ambassador Krazak and Tactical Coordinator Viridian sat across from him, their tall forms making the office seem smaller than it was. A 4th chair waited for Rachel. Captain Hayes, Bradford greeted her. Please, sit. Rachel took the offered seat, noting the formal use of her rank. You wanted to see me, sir? Our Centurion allies have made an interesting proposal. Bradford gestured to the ambassador. One I think you should hear. Ambassador Krazak leaned forward. The Joint Species Flight Program has struggled since your departure. Captain Hayes, human pilots with the neural compatibility to fully utilize our hybrid systems are rare. Those with both compatibility and exceptional skill are rarer still. What the ambassador is saying, Bradford translated, is that they want you back, not just as a pilot, but as an instructor. Rachel blinked in surprise. An instructor? Tactical Coordinator Viridian took over. We propose establishing a new flight academy, one that selects candidates based on neural compatibility and aptitude, not political connections or species. Its pupilless eyes seemed to see through her. It would require a leader who understands both human and Centurion methods. Someone respected by both species. Me, Rachel said, understanding dawning. You want me to run this academy? The Hayes Cuisine Flight Academy, Bradford confirmed. Named for you and Tactical Coordinator Viridian's predecessor, who developed the first successful neural interface protocols. Rachel sat back, stunned by the offer. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Bradford urged. This is more than just a job offer, Rachel. It's a chance to change the system that failed you, to ensure that merit, not politics, determines who flies our most advanced vessels. Where would this academy be located? Europa Station, Bradford replied. Neutral territory, jointly administered. You'd have complete autonomy in selecting candidates and developing the curriculum. He paused. And Captain Harrison would never darken your door. Despite herself, Rachel smiled at that. Tempting. Consider it carefully, Ambassador Krazak advised. The role requires commitment, but it also offers freedom. The freedom to teach as you believe is right. Rachel thought of the years spent hiding, of the skills she had suppressed, of the joy she had felt at the Chimera's controls. She thought of others like her, passed over because they lacked connections, because they didn't fit the fleet's image of what a pilot should be. I need to wrap up a few things first, she said finally. There are people here I want to say proper goodbyes to. Bradford's face broke into a genuine smile. Then you accept? I accept. Rachel felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, not just the burden of her false identity, but the heavier burden of purposelessness. When do I start? The following morning, Rachel made her rounds through the maintenance division, saying goodbye to the colleagues who had become her family over 8 years. Some were awkward, unsure how to address her now. Others, like Wilson, were genuinely happy for her new opportunity. You'll visit? Wilson asked, as he helped her pack the few personal items from her maintenance locker. Count on it. Rachel hesitated, then offered her hand. Thank you, Jake, for everything. Wilson ignored the hand and pulled her into a brief, gruff hug. Make them earn it, Captain. No free passes. Never, she promised. Her last stop was the hangar, where the Chimera PX-9 waited. Her transport to Europa Station would leave in an hour, but she needed this final moment with the ship that had restored her identity. As she approached, she was surprised to see Harrison standing by the access ladder, a flight suit folded over his arm. He stiffened when he saw her. Captain Hayes. Captain Harrison. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Finally, Harrison thrust the flight suit toward her. This is yours. Standard issue for your new rank. Rachel looked at the offered garment but didn't take it. Keep it. What? I don't need a uniform to know who I am anymore. Rachel smiled faintly. And maybe it will remind you that the uniform doesn't make the pilot. Harrison's face flushed, but to his credit, he didn't lash out. The review board has suggested that I spend time in maintenance training before returning to flight status. Good advice. Rachel nodded toward the Chimera. She's a complex lady. Understanding how she works might make you a better pilot. If they ever let me fly again, that's up to you, isn't it? Rachel checked the time on her comm unit. I should go. My transport leaves soon. Harrison nodded stiffly. Good luck with the academy. Thank you. As Rachel turned to leave, she noticed something on the maintenance console nearby. Her old pilot's badge, polished to a high shine. Beside it lay the holograph of her flight team and a handwritten note. She recognized Major Cross's handwriting. For the next underdog who needs to believe, J.C. Rachel smiled, left the items where they were, and walked away from the hangar without looking back. Her past was finally at peace. Her future awaited. 6 months later, Rachel stood in the observation dome of Europa Station, watching as a small training vessel executed a perfect series of maneuvers against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling clouds. Inside that vessel, a young human pilot was completing her first solo flight in a hybrid craft. A pilot who had failed the Academy's entrance exams 3 times before finding her way to the Hayes Cuisine Flight Academy. Impressive control, Tactical Coordinator Viridian observed, standing beside Rachel. Her neural patterns are remarkably stable for a first solo. She has natural talent, Rachel agreed. The kind the old system overlooked because she doesn't fit the profile. The training vessel completed its final maneuver and began its approach to the docking bay. Rachel could imagine the pilot's elation, the same joy she had felt during her own first solo, the same exhilaration she had rediscovered in the Chimera's cockpit after 8 years of exile. "Instructor Hayes?" A young Centurion acolyte approached, tablet in hand. "The new applicants have arrived. 23 humans, 17 Centurions." "Thank you. I'll be there shortly." As the acolyte departed, Rachel took a final moment to watch the training vessel dock successfully. Another pilot launched into the stars. Another life set on its proper course. Rachel touched the sleeve of her instructor's jacket. Not a military uniform, but a simple garment bearing the Academy's insignia. A stylized neural interface overlaid on the silhouette of a hybrid vessel. No rank insignia. No badges of authority. Just the mark of shared purpose and mutual respect. She had finally found her place among the stars. Not as Captain Hayes, the decorated officer. Not as Rachel Daniels, the hidden technician, but as Instructor Hayes, who understood both worlds and could guide others between them. Rachel smiled and turned away from the viewport. New students waited, and the stars would always be there, bright, constant, and finally, within reach again.